So, Min, what got you into game design?
Uh, Boredom and a hard head. I used to write stories a lot, and I found it to be a lot of fun to create worlds and different characters. And constantly, people would read my stuff and say, "This feels like it should be an RPG game." And when I was younger, I got really into a game called Warlords Battlecry 2, and I tried. That was my first attempt at getting into modding because I really fell in love with that game. And that's probably where I got started in terms of my interest in developing games and creating worlds and presenting those to people.
And how did you learn to code? And why? I guess why would be like because you wanted to make the game.
Yeah, I definitely learned code just for game development. I learned it through trial and error, and whenever I had something that I could not fumble my way through, I would watch YouTube videos like from Brackeys as a great example. I think he was the main one that I would turn to if I ever had an issue that I couldn't figure out on my own. I definitely would look at the Unity forums and stuff to learn how to do things better and how to adapt what I had already done. And it's still to this day, I'll be fiddling with it and discover, oh wow, this was garbage. Why did I ever do this? No. So it's a constant experience of learning and growing, and it makes it a very interesting role to fill. So,
God, I can't imagine learning coding just for a game. That's it seems like a lot, but obviously it was worth it. How long did that take you?
I started game development probably 6 years ago would be my guess.
Jeez.
And okay, here we go. So my first game I released on July the 14th of 2015, and I did not code that game. I just did the design and some of the art. I was working with John then, and he did the music. And from that point, we started working on a much more scope intensive game. And that was where I started to teach myself to code. And after 2 years or 3 years of working on that game, we determined that that was an unsalvageable mess in the current form that it was in. And we needed to step away and look at the drawing board later to fix it. So we took that opportunity to make Prodigal, and I coded it entirely from the ground up, and it has been a experience to say the least.
What's been your favorite part about making Prodigal?
Oh goodness. My favorite part about Prodigal is probably working with the team and watching people engage with the game. The actual creation of it for me, outside of story aspects, can be pretty frustrating, but the reward comes from watching someone do a puzzle that I redid 20 times or a boss that I redid 4 or 5 times. Like the boss for Backrooms patch day actually, I redid it 3 different times because I just wasn't happy with where it was. Um, so it was nice when I got to watch people play it and they enjoyed the boss. It made it feel worthwhile.
And like, would that be your least favorite part about making Prodigal, or is there something even?
My least favorite part is mm, probably it's self-inflicted. It's exactly what I just said of I would take something and say this is fine, but it's not good enough, and I would do it over and over and over again. And I think that's a self-fulfilling misery that I inflicted on myself, but it obviously in the end uh hopefully comes out as worth.
Yeah, it definitely always seems to work out, but it's always kind of like a struggle watching you be like, this is my sixth time redoing this. And I remember we had to remake a lot of the mechanics of the game near the end. I remember having the meeting where it's like, this game is not fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. We that was a fun meeting. I think it was 11 o'clock my time or midnight my time, and I pinged everyone and said we need to talk. And I think we were 6 months in with 2 months left, and I said the game is not fun. It is garbage. It is bad, and I'm going to throw away all of the code, most of the design. We're keeping the story and the art, but I'm starting over. And what are your suggestions? And I think some team members appropriately wanted to strangle me. I probably should have strangled myself, but I spent the next 2 months living an unhealthy lifestyle in order to make our deadline still. So,
God, I remember that too, where it was just like, oh, good, the entire game is bad. It's like, oh, can you cut down like all of your writing? But I think in the end, it turned out way better than it probably would have.
oh yeah, without a doubt, it's a ton better. It's a lot more fun to play. It makes a lot more sense. It's easier for people to get a grip on and kind of wander their way through. The thing before was just such a bungled mess of different ideas that didn't flow well together. It was bad. So,
Speaking of, I guess, story and fixing everything, who's your favorite character, Min?
oh gosh,
Not girl. You can't just say River.
it wouldn't be River. Goodness
Oh,
gracious, she's
okay.
best girl. Obviously, that doesn't mean she's the best character. Um, well, my favorite character in the game would probably be Zagel because I find him hilarious, and I uh, I had him created before this, so I'm a little more attached to him and have a better understanding of his future and what he has in store, that sort of thing. Um, if I'm limited to characters we specifically designed for Prodigal, um, I think my favorite character, if it wasn't Zagel, would be Amadeus. As lame as that is, I enjoy his story, and he was one of the first characters that I came up with for the purpose of this story. So he's kind of the one of the cornerstones in my mind.
Yeah, he's definitely like the dude. Like one of the main guys that always seems to come up. And yeah, his future story that we're gonna write is pretty sick, from my understanding of it at least.
Hmm.
And what's your favorite dungeon so far?
Oh goodness. Favorite dungeon is probably going to be Backrooms, which is totally unfair because I just made it and the song for it
Oh,
is
the song.
magnificent. Anytime John gets to work with that swing sort of sound, he makes some really fun tracks that I'm really into. Um, but I would figure the desire would be to limit it to the original dungeons, not just the patch ones, because hopefully with every patch, my new favorite dungeon is the more recently released one, as
Yeah.
it was with the haunted house. Um, I think my favorite is Crocasino, and that's because I enjoy the kind of stealth mechanic that breaks things up from the rest of the gameplay. I didn't take it as far as I wanted to, but that's a goal that I want to fulfill in the future. We're patching in these future dungeons and giving you all more toys to play with.
I feel like we've all, like, each patch we just get better. And it makes it hard because it's like, for me at least, sometimes it's like you look at other things and you're like, oh, I kind of want to go back and like either add more or like bring it up to the level that we're at now.
It's really tempting for me to like make tweaks on older dungeons and the original pathing of the game, especially when it's something that I look at and say, this is bad, this is awful. And it might be something small, like the placement of one breakable block, and I hate it and it's bad and it bothers me, but I can't change it and I don't want to change it because at this point we have a ton of people that are working really hard on speed runs and pathing and how they can do the game
Oh,
as beautifully as possible. And if I go through and start tweaking their dungeons, that's going to throw off runs and ruin the best time and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it's hard like having a speed run with a game that's not like 10 years old because we're still making adjustments to it, and I wonder like the more we add, is it going to affect the time or like make the route easier or harder?
I'm trying to stay attentive of the wonderful wife any percent run. I'm trying not to modify that at all. We may run into an instance where a new girl is shorter or faster to complete than the current one,
Mm-hmm.
Lynn. And if that's the case, I'm not really going to sweat that. But if I go through and, for instance, add 2 more rooms to Magma Heart, or if I added an additional cutscene to Lynn, stuff like that, that's going to add time and it's going to make it a heck of a lot harder for people to compete with any of the higher ranking people since they had done times before. Because you think about when I had my original time, when I told people, yeah, I beat it in 58 minutes, and they would go, no, there's no way. Well, that was before we had the boat scene. That was before we had some of the other little scenes that we added in,
Oh, yeah.
and that made it so much harder for people to beat my time. They have now, which is awesome, but um, if we do stuff like that, the way I'm trying to look at it is like we have the original base game, and that was the game that released on the Game Boy. Like that's what it was, and what we're bringing into it is rather than making Soul Silver, or not Soul Silver, just Silver. Rather than making Silver, we're adding Silver into Red and Blue.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's crazy because in speedrunning, even like a 10-second can like affect an entire run.
Yeah, little things. Like if I go through and modify the drop rates on gold off of the rocks, that could hugely affect the run because a big part of the run right now is they spend their first minute after getting the pickaxe trying to get 70 gold so that they can get the damage buff before going into the first dungeon.
Oh, yeah, so they can like
And
one cycle
yeah.
the boss.
So if I go through and I'm like, okay, well, every rock's going to drop at least one, and I'm going to reduce, like, the best example would be if I would greatly reduce the drop rate of title gems. If I did that, you have an object that over the course of a run, you run the risk of seeing that will slow you down. It also, at that one part of the run that I was discussing, drop instead of 10 gold. So that would have a much wider reaching effect on the speedrunners than, say, moving a block.
Gosh, yeah, it's crazy when you think about it like that. Like just small things that we could add could just affect certain things so significantly.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to be attentive of stuff that doesn't affect what already exists. A great example of this is the rings. So we were always planning to do rings, and they would do interesting things or empowering things for the player. And sure, that could absolutely affect the current speed run if people go out of their way to get the rings. I don't know if they're going to be worthwhile or not. But in that instance, it's not something that's affecting the current pathing. It's something that's additional, that's creating a modification, that's creating a potential alternate path. Like, let's say we have our current set of dungeons, right? And that's what you go through for the main story. And later on, we have a plan to do a series of dungeons where you are stealing a color. And I've floated the idea that, well, what if you could access these dungeons the same way you can the other ones early, and rather than being forced to do Magma and Castle Van, you say, oh, well, maybe I want to go do this color dungeon and this other color dungeon. And then we're bringing into play, like I said, the option of different routes that people can try and experiment with rather than going in and modifying and ruining the current route. Because that's the thing that I think is the most troublesome for these people trying to speed run through.
Yeah, and with speedrunning, our community's been insane. It's so crazy seeing so many people come in and talk daily and like seem so invested in something that like we worked on, I guess. It's kind of surreal in a sense.
Yeah, we have a great cozy community of people that are extremely supportive, extremely engaged, and I uh, I couldn't thank them enough for all the time and energy they're putting into the game and all their streams that they're doing and YouTube videos. It is blowing me away, and it is a blast to watch. Because, like I said, that's the biggest payoff for me is getting to see their experiences. Because it's kind of like a painter, right? What's the point of me painting my greatest painting of all time if I'm just going to put it in a shed and no one's ever going to see it? Part of the value of it is the appreciation of the eye, the people experiencing and having their own reactions and engagements with it. So, by that same token, that's the most fun for me is seeing all these people having their negative and positive reactions.
What are some of your favorite memories of the dev team?
Oh
No
gosh.
pressure.
I don't know. We've had a number of amusing times together and goofing off and doing dumb things. Um I think one of the funnier things that stands out to me is Scoot had designed the Medusa, and I was smitten. And I said, "Listen, folks, monster girls need love too. We're gonna marry Ren. She's gonna be a secret path, and it's gonna be magnificent." And Lou just takes this hardline stance of monster girls deserve only one thing: death. and and so I made this I cut red and I put red text over it and said monster girls need love too, and I would just post it at him periodically to agitate him.
Ah, yes.
So
I think a really good one too, also bringing Lou into the equation, and for a similar reason, was the Caroline wedding portrait, um, where she had very large assets
oh yeah.
being shown. And Lou said, maybe that's too much. And so Scoot in protest made like a super flat Caroline, like no
No
breasts.
chest.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
think I've saved a lot of the fun times and goofy things. Let's see here. Yeah, I think we have a lot of fun together. I think as with any team and group of people, which we disagree and occasionally
yes.
butt heads, like me wanting to have the Medusa girl be a wedding option and Lou just wanting to murder her. To each their own. I can't stop them, but
Just to kind of wrap things up, Min, what's been your biggest takeaway from Prodigal, and what do you want to use in the future with either future games or just future updates?
mm, and strictly in terms of design or uh, in general.
In general.
In general, I was very worried about a lot of things because a lot of people may not know I have a very strong opinion in terms of games holding your hand. I think it's obnoxious. I find it demeaning and annoying, and it takes away a lot of opportunity for the player to feel like, aha, I've discovered something. So, obviously, with this game, we have very minimal hand holding. There are things available to you for you to find your way if you are feeling lost, but I definitely felt uncomfortable, not because I disagreed with it, but because I felt like gamers in general today wouldn't be able to enjoy that. Because you think about like the more recent Pokemon games where you can't walk 5 steps without a tutorial friendly character come up and be like, hey, let me tell you about this, and here's 5 screens that show you step by step how to do this.
Yeah.
And like that's the norm today. So the idea of throwing something out there that definitely was not doing that, I was concerned we'd get a lot of negative blowback of people saying, "Oh, well, I don't understand this. I don't get how that works, and this is terrible," all that sort of stuff. But so far, we've had a great response, and people have really enjoyed it and appreciated that, save for a few. And that's not to knock them at all or to talk down about them, because, like I said, to each their own. And I expected people to not enjoy that type of thing.
Oh, it's definitely like the type of player. I feel like we have a lot of people who are there for like the nostalgia factor and who are there because they played the old Pokemon games that didn't hold your hand, and I think that really they really appreciate that.
Yeah. And hopefully, the what I hope to take away from it is to continue to feel comfortable with that and enabling people to have that moment of discovery and finding that nice balance between enabling that and providing sufficient tutorial. So,
Well, awesome. Thank you, Min. If you're interested, please buy Prodigal on Steam. It's $10. It's awesome. And that's it.
it'll last longer than a burrito that you could get for $10 too.
That's
Just
true.
saying.
You can have more fun than with a burrito, but it won't
It could
provide sustenance.
You could play for 300 hours like Omverse. It's providing something for him.
God, 300 hours. There's like people who played it for 30 hours, and that's crazy. Like we
Yeah.
said it was what 5 hours? Like
We were scared it would be 2 to 5 hours
yeah.
of gameplay because I was the main one playing it and testing it, and of course I'm zooming through.
And we forget that people have to learn all the lore that you just have in your head. Yeah, if you want a 30-hour game, Prodigal's for you. And then if you want to join our community, our Discord link is below. And we're active in there. I'm like always in there because I stay up all night. Min's always in there. And it's a fun time. So thank you, Min.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you have a nice day, and check out Prodigal if you haven't yet. Give it a gander.
Please buy our game.